The Acura NSX, if you're in the US, or the Honda NSX, if you're in most other reaches of the world, was a technological triumph when it arrived in the early 90s. It was as much race car as it was a luxury sports car, and nearly as easy to maintain as a Honda Accord. With an all-new NSX set to arrive in a couple of years, is now the time for you to pounce on an older NSX of your very own. That's what we're talking about today on After Drive. So if you're into cars and you don't know the names Ken Okayama and Shigeru Uehara, Satoru Nakajima, and of course Ayrton Senna, well, you should. They're responsible for the new sports car experimental prototype, and that prototype would eventually become the NSX. For many, the NSX would also become a big part of the Senna legend after Senna famously insisted Honda stiffen the chassis after driving it around Suzuka a couple of times. So today on After Drive, we are taking on the NSX, Honda's groundbreaking mid-engine sports car. So from Classic Car Club Manhattan, Zac Mosley, Mike Piccinello, thanks again for coming in. Zac, you wore the pink socks again, of course.
Yeah, you know, they got so much popular attention last time. I had to bring them back and point out that you guys missed the message that comes along with them. It says, "I'm with awesome," with a big arrow pointing at me. So nice. If there's any doubt about the socks, it's clarified.
That's right, exactly. So you just have regular socks?
No, I'm just regular guy with black socks. I want to know exactly what the arrow is pointing to on those socks. There's a lot of distance between up and down.
Yes.
So
right now they're pointing at you.
Mm-hmm.
So the NSX.
Yeah.
So you guys have had one.
Yeah, awesome. One of the best cars we've ever had.
So we can't talk about the old NSX unless we talk about the new NSX. So this is what's coming out in the next couple of years to be built in Ohio. Mm-hmm. They're talking about hybrid powertrain stuff, but also probably similar ethos to the original. It's an accessible supercar-ish kind of high-end sports car.
Track-inspired automobile.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Technologically advanced. Has to be, you know.
But easy to own.
The 20 years later version of it.
Exactly. So they've got a lot to live up to with this, because the original was designed with a number of benchmarks in mind, right? So Honda wanted to beat Ferrari and Lamborghini and Porsche and all that stuff.
Right.
But they also wanted the ownership to be a really easy experience, so that they could, and then the price point, of course, to be thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of
Japanese
dollars less.
version of an Italian supercar. It's all those things,
Exactly.
right? It works, it's reliable, a little less expensive. Yeah. Flamboyant, turned down 10 degrees.
Yeah, very, kind of very unflamboyant. Well, yeah, I mean,
functional.
Yeah. So with the new one coming out, the older ones are going to be something that people, I think, are going to want to own. So you guys have had at least one that I know of, and probably others, right?
Yeah.
It was a great car.
Yeah, absolutely one of the best cars we've had. And, you know, it ticks all the boxes in the story. We actually, coincidentally, we bought it in October of 2009 and took delivery of it on a rainy day, the same day we took delivery of a 355 GTS. And everyone loves the 355 Ferrari for whatever reason. I've owned 3 of them, and I've sworn I will never go near one ever again. One of the worst cars ever. Sorry,
wow.
Sorry, haters, start typing now furiously. But it's true. So we took delivery of the 2 cars at the same time. I drove both cars back to back on the way back from Long Island on the truck they're unloaded on. And the 325, the steering was numb and too assisted. It was a GTS, and it was creaky and twisty and scary in the wet. It was like just nothing good about it, except I guess it does make a kind of that Italian wail. It had 2 big exhauster, and I got in the NSX. It was so much better. Yeah. It was solid, mechanical. You know, ergonomics are right. That's the lowest dashboard of any car I've ever driven. It's like almost level with your knees, and you see the road right over your knees.
You know, that whole cockpit was inspired by fighter jets.
Yeah.
The 360 view that they have, and I think that's where that all comes from.
Well, that's right, exactly. That was one of the original design briefs that they were looking at, was to create a 360-degree view, or at least the
canopy effect.
Canopy effect.
It does. I mean, one of the best ergonomics in a car. And you have to remember the benchmark for this car when they were designing it was a 328. 348 had its issues, and then the 355, with the next generation car, I still think this was better. This
Yeah.
is a 1991 NSX we had,
Well,
the proper one.
You know, interestingly enough, so you know the McLaren F1, right?
Yeah.
So probably considered to be, if not the best sports car of all time, at least, up there,
It's a
number
desert
one or number
island
two,
hypercar.
right? Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So Gordon Murray, who designed the F1, this is an interesting quote that we came up with about the NSX, because don't forget, so Senna's driving a Honda-powered McLaren, right? And McLaren's building a new supercar. So Gordon Murray is the guy behind it. Gordon Murray says, the moment I drove the Honda NSX, all the benchmark cars, Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, I had been using as references in the development of my car, vanished from my mind. Of course, the car we would create, the McLaren F1, needed to be faster than the NSX, but the NSX's ride quality and handling would become our new design target.
Yeah.
So this is the whole thing. So he literally, Honda leapfrogged over all of the competition and created a car for, what was the 355 going for at the time? Was it around 90 grand?
A 348
The 348
was
okay.
$90,000.
Was
Right.
$90,000.
Yeah, it was MSRP when it was new in 91.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the
This
NSX
was 60.
Yeah.
60, yeah. 30
So still
grand.
not cheap during the day, but
Right.
a lot of technology, a lot of car for that. It's $30,000 less.
Interestingly, though, so the 348, but then they Ferrari got better with the 355. The 355 was the first of its used more aluminum in it, right?
You're right, yeah, and the first of the F1 gearbox, which is not
Right.
a good idea at the time.
But the NSX
Yeah.
had already
Yeah,
been
it was
using
already
aluminum.
fully
First
aluminum structure.
aluminum road car ever
Yeah.
produced. Yeah.
So this is actually
It's a later one.
A
like
later
the
model.
02 or newer.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what it would be like to buy one now. If you're actually, this is the Zanardi one, right?
Yeah.
So this is
Zanardi red.
like a 99, right? So the other thing is that they created a bunch of different editions, right? So they had the Zanardi, they had the
R.
NSX R, but we didn't get a lot of those things. So in America,
Right.
if you're going to go out and buy one of these, your choices are pretty much limited to
They only
the
made a-
base model
They only made a
yeah.
couple
or
dozen.
the Targa.
They only made a couple dozen R's. I actually saw one last weekend, or I was at the ALMS race in at
Lime Rock.
Oh,
Lime Rock
yeah.
Park. Yeah, and guy had one in the park. I showed up with
Nice.
his GT40. I thought I was pretty cool. This guy showed up in an NSX R.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had me beat.
So
Well,
now,
yeah,
you
I mean,
guys
so-
buy
so-
and sell cars a lot, right?
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why we talk about this stuff with you guys a lot. So if you were going to go out and buy an NSX right now, which
Yeah.
I think with all the talk of the new one, I think it's inevitable that the attention on the older one is going to just increase. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the example with ours, and I can also tell you where the 355 ended up too.
Yeah.
Those two cars, I bought the NSX for 27 grand. Low miles, like adult owned, had 44,000 miles on it.
Wow.
I sold it 3 years and 50,000 miles later for 28 grand.
Wow.
So I used it get great use out of it. It was driven around Manhattan. It had some cosmetics and stuff, and it still made money on it.
Well, what year was it? That was an
That was
earlier
91.
So it was a first generation.
Right, first generation.
First model year, right?
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah,
that.
and honestly, I mean, people will tell you that that's the one to get because that's from that edition forward, it got heavier and softer.
Right.
They did motor get a little bigger. Targa top was an option, but you lose the purity of that original car.
So Senna's original recommendation to make the chassis stiffer
Yeah.
held on the first one, but eventually I guess they
it
started.
got watered. I mean,
Creature comfort started to jump into it a little bit.
yeah, I mean, they made it for 14 years. They had to do other things to it, and people wanted more commodities in it.
They also got very expensive. Well, they didn't get very expensive, but over the life, it went from $60,000 to $90,000.
Yeah.
So 50% price increase as well, for things that you don't, or at least I necessarily don't want in a track-inspired car. Anyway,
Yeah.
once you
Right.
start adding those things,
Yeah, and the parallel story, that 355, we paid, and this was at the bottom of the downturn, so probably the cheapest you get one. I paid like 57 grand for it, and 2 months later, it was smashed to bits and written off.
Which one was with the 355?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
wasn't driving.
So
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. But so what about maintenance? So how did the times you guys had it? Now,
Yeah.
just so that everybody knows, you guys, the club the members of the club drive these cars a lot, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
they're driven a lot. They're not like garage queens. Like you buy them and then people use them.
everything we drive is
driven by a variety of people.
Yeah.
So they get treated better than if it was a rental. But it's not like if I drove myself.
They're subject to different driving styles.
Exactly.
There you go. But yeah, that car was bulletproof. It was a little clutch hungry, but I think part of that was also failed clutch installs by other people. When we finally did it, we got it right, and the clutch lasted.
Right.
But
because I had heard.
we didn't even have to get into that. I think it
was done before we bought it.
We bought it with a timing belt and the water pump were done. Those are the two big things.
Those are the things you have to do.
And
that's going to be your one bill.
Now, and they're not, but it's not like a Ferrari where you got to, at least the 355, where you have to drop the motor to do anything, or to like drop the.
No. I mean,
So-
it's like doing a timing belt on a Honda.
But it's
V6.
literally like, but I mean, the access to the engine bay and all that stuff, like it's not that much more than doing a timing belt for like an Acura Legend.
Yeah.
Same,
I mean,
really.
it's a transverse V6. It's got the same kind of transaxle that the front-wheel drive cars have. It's all pretty straightforward. And literally, other than the clutches and the stupid self-amplified Bose speakers, those are a bit of pain in the ass. But like, like we had to strip out the system, and you have to change the whole center console to put a different stereo in it. But those are like quirks of buying a '90s car that had a premium sound system in it.
Right.
And the first year they made it.
Yeah, but mechanically the car was rock solid, and we couldn't ask for anything better.
So you're buying a very highly technologically advanced sports car for Camry money, at least if you can find one.
Yeah.
And you're maintaining it even if you take it to an Acura dealer.
Yeah.
Right? Or a Honda dealer if you're not in the States. It's all that stuff is pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
so the whole ownership cost is a fraction was, and now, as we've seen, they're going to start appreciating. So it's a great car to buy.
All right, so that's another. All right, well, one last thing. What about replacement cost for like an insurance cost because the chassis is so exotic?
That is an issue.
about.
So that is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
It's the sort of car you're going to write off if you have what would be considered a average bang up.
Yeah.
Could do a tremendous amount of damage to that car, and you're going to have to write it off.
Yeah.
So you bend the frame, you're done.
Yeah, we actually have experience with that one too.
Yeah.
A garage attendant started our Cobra in a parking garage for someone to hear it. When he was in the car, he just leaned in and hit the start button. It was in gear, and it launched into an NSX and totaled the NSX.
Oh, the Cobra did? The
Yeah.
Cobra totaled the NSX.
Yeah. At about 4 miles an hour.
Oh,
It's
so
like this far away, just pushed the start and it jumped right
where did
into
it hit? Did it hit the side or the?
Yeah, it hit the side of the car.
So aluminum hard to fix, kind
Yeah,
of. All right,
especially
so
It stretches them. Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
So,
So the Carfax is going to be really important when you're buying one.
you don't want to crash banged up on it, and that is the biggest issue with them is that they because it became so accessible, and you could buy a 91 with a reasonable amount of miles for 18, 19 grand a few years ago.
Yeah.
So kids that were looking at buying a Civic would buy an NSX instead, and then, clap the car out and ruin it. So.
Well, what are they going for now? What's a first generation?
Like a good one's going to be mid-30s. I mean, ours was higher miles with some cosmetics, and it was high 20s.
Right.
And then it's going to go up from there. The later generations, although I think the first is the best, they do still bring more money because they're
Right. Well, all right. So let's.
later, more exotic machines.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the downsides a little bit. Power's low, right? So compared to a modern sports car, 270 horsepower to begin with,
Yeah,
and
but
then a
that
little
never
bit more
bothered.
later.
I guess it's all your driving style. But
Yeah.
I actually I don't need 600 horsepower personally. I really like the power to weight ratio of that car because you could use it.
What was the weight around? It was about 27?
Yeah,
Something?
26, 27, something like
like
that. But it revs to 8,000 RPM, so you can have a really good experience in that. And it was really the weight is light. I don't know what the exact number is, but
Yeah.
so it had that real pure sort of driving experience. It was all about keeping the revs up. It wasn't a slowpoke.
And it actually, everyone says, oh, you can never make the sound a Ferrari makes. I know it's not going to have that like high, strong Italian wail, but it makes this great like grunty sound when you get into it. It's really cool,
I mean, that's the truth. I mean, when you wind it out,
Yeah.
it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is that if you look at this car and then you look at the new GTR, they're very similar in that they don't feel like much until you really, really start pushing it to the limit.
I also think that they're both technological cars, but they feel very mechanical, which is really, it's a nice thing. You know, a lot of I feel like cars, modern day cars, you know, they're burdened by a lot of restrictions. So they need airbags in the sills, and they need airbags on the side, and now they need cameras in the rear. And all that stuff adds to the weight, and it changes the geometry of the car. And this is sort of, for me, one of the last modern sports cars right before that era of legislation happened.
Right.
And the GTR is loaded up with those things, but I think that it was approached, again, a track-derived car for the road, so it does keep that mechanical feel, I think, and those two have that lineage together.
And you're right about the regulations that came later, because you can't find a car as low as this anymore because the side impact regulations are so stringent that now you get these slab-sided cars.
Sports car designers have to work in this box now, and it cuts limitations, it cuts creativity, but I guess it helps with the R&D.
Right, exactly. So I mean, for a first generation, you're looking at around 30 grand. For the second generation, it's more in the 50s and up, right? I mean,
well, I'd say for this generation, it's the 50s and up. There's a mid-generation when they had the Targas, and you know, probably still demand a bit more money, but I think that will eventually invert. I think the 91s are going to surpass it eventually.
So 91 and 92, I guess, were coupe only, and then they did the NSX T, which was the Targa, and then once they changed the generation, moved up, then they were all Targas.
I think so. At this generation, they're all Targas with the open headlights.
So, and then the mechanical differences were the engine, it got
a little
higher displacement. So it was a 3.2 instead of 3.0.
Started with 3.0. Yeah.
And there were some other things to look at. So, but up until 2005. So 2005, it went away. If you were going to buy one right now, what would you do? Like, what would be the things you looked at if you're going to buy one right now?
I mean, obviously, with the aluminum chassis, you want to have one that hasn't been smashed. You know, I do think there are some things you can do to the car that make it better and don't ruin the nature of it. But I'd kind of like to do that stuff myself rather than trust that someone else did it right, you know? But just little things. I mean, like, you could, you know, an exhaust helps the car, and the early ones had those like 15-inch wheels. You can get the 16, 17 wheels from mid-year that makes it a little more modern looking. You know, put on a Honda S2000 steering wheel, actually brings it up like 2 generations. There's little things you can do that aren't bastardizing the car that make it feel a bit more modern. But again, the value is going to be in one that's totally original, even having the original Yokohama wheels. You know, the tires for these cars are actually really, really unique too. They were designed with unique tread patterns for each side that actually simulated a toe-out effect.
Really?
Yeah, the tread blocks would pull the tires under certain conditions.
They'd sort of toe out.
But it makes it actually something, you know, like you can't, the 15-inch Yokohamas that came on the first generation, you almost can't buy them anymore. The proper tires for it, and they made them
super soft too, because they would oversteer too much because of the track nature of the car.
So it's a little tire hungry and stuff, but yeah, I mean, just look for the cleanest, you know, most responsibly owned one you can get, and then you know what you're dealing with. There's a lot out there that have been, you know, supercharged and unsupercharged, and you know, you just don't know.
Well, it's the Supra effect, where like it's hard to find one that's hasn't been messed with a lot. But unlike the Supra, there are a lot of these around that have not been molested in that way. But yeah, it's just finding the best one you can. But I think that they're about on the edge of starting a real climb in value, because, you know, last time you guys were here, we talked about the E30 M3, right? And that thing has since we did that show, it's gone up, because I saw a 200,000 mile E30 that went for like 28 grand.
Wow.
You know, it had an engine rebuild, right, which is already expensive. But that's sort of you've already paid for that in paying for that car.
It's in the realm where people are spending money on cars. That's like, you know, whether it's 30 or 35 grand. You know, what's the other thing you're gonna buy for 35 grand? Like an old Boxster S, you know, like.
Right. Do you think that these cars are becoming popular because they're starting to be classics because they're 20 years old, or is it because people are looking for that more simplistic driving experience.
Oh, both.
Because
I think we were talking about that before. Yeah, that's both of those things because it's getting, it's impossible to find a new car that feels like this car.
Yeah, I feel like at least in America, drivers are becoming more sophisticated, looking for those things.
Short of the Scion FRS, which always does come up again.
Well, that's true.
Right,
yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. The
but still, you could spend 26 grand on one of those, or 30 grand and get an NSX.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And the NSX is going to go up, and Scion's obviously going to go down.
Yeah. So I mean, 10-year outlook. If you can get one and hang on to it, I think you could be doubling your. I mean, not to give financial advice because obviously nobody wants financial advice from me. but I think this is kind of a sure bet at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
If there were a sure bet in cars, I think that's a big reason why we got to do this show. So,
well, we've done it.
Yeah, we've done it. So, you guys let us know. Are you buying an NSX? And when would you buy an NSX? Are you going to buy an NSX right now? Damn it, go out and get one.
Buy us one,
Bring it over. Take us for a ride. Let me drive it. Zach, Mike, thanks for coming by.
Yeah,
are you planning to get an NSX anytime soon?
Yeah, we will.
You're always on the lookout for cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the club's purposes, I would, I may actually go for something a little bit bastardized, like an R clone or something, just to give it the impact in the place that it deserves. Because that was one of the, as awesome as the car was, and we had a new McLaren in there and a 458 and a GT40. People overlook the NSX and we're like, oh, come on, man, Ayrton Senna, you gotta drive this thing. But I think if we get one that's just hopped up enough to give the ultimate edition of it, then people will respect a bit more.
We just put an order in for the new GT3 as well. We're gonna have to talk about that one.
Oh, well, yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that yet.
Really? With the just paddles? Only paddles? Yeah, the rear.
That's what bothers me the most. But I haven't driven it yet, so I don't know. We'll see.
Looks awesome.
It does look awesome. So that's After Drive for today. Thanks, guys, for coming in. We'll see you next week. Later.
So this is the 2013 Guerrilla golf cart. I think it's quite beautiful. I'll show you a couple of things about it. First of all, obviously it has really nice leather seats, which is nice. You don't usually see that in a golf cart. It has a trunk that could fit, a weekend bag in the back. Stereo, real glass windshield. Has a cooler, which is electrically cooled in the dash there. So we keep our charger in there, but I bought chocolates for my wife once. It was 3 weeks ago. It was really hot. They stayed cold by the time I got home. It's limited to 25 miles an hour, but it's electric. So all the torque is right up in the beginning, through the whole power band. So we drive it all around town, and it's actually it's a presidential way to get around, man. That's the thing. And it's kind of like a social media tool, because when you're in it, everybody sort of wants to know what it is. I've taken strangers for a ride. Told them, don't stab me, you come in and I'll take you for a food box. But I'd also say it's a lot quicker to get around a metropolitan area in this than it is in a regular car. Because you can slide up like you can in a motorcycle and kind of pick your way through the lane when everybody's stopped. And because you do have all that torque from the electric motor, you get away from them before the cabs sort of get up to speed. And then you're at the next red light already. It doesn't matter.
And at least so far, you can park it anywhere. We'll park on the sidewalk. No one seems to know what to do with it. They're like, well, I guess if they're on the sidewalk, they know what they're doing. They have no idea.
I've driven it to Brooklyn. I've driven from Soho to the Upper East Side and back. You get about they say 40-mile range. I think that's when it's on low speed. On high speed, probably like 20 miles. So it's good. It's really cool. And you can totally chirp the tires on this thing. And you can do pretty bitchin' donuts as well.
Yeah.
We've done that.
Especially on slippery floors.
Yeah. The tires aren't really made for rainy days. I think they're actually made for golf courses, but you might want to put some new go-kart rubber on it if you drive around the city. But it's also environmentally friendly. It's electric. No one can bitch at you when you're cutting them off. You're being responsible about it. Yeah. Environmentally conscious lane splitter.
Yeah. And while when you get used to driving, it's not that bad to drive. The back seat is terrifying but hilarious because you're hanging off the back.
It's about to crush you.
You can't see anything other than pavement going under your feet, and every cab comes up to about here where they stop.
It's exciting. Yeah. To be honest, though, our garage has nearly 50 cars in it. It's just the first thing I look for when I have to get from A to B if it's in town. Yeah. It does have seatbelts, yeah. I recommend you wear them. It's safe, but I guess if you get hit from the side, you don't want to be thrown out of it. That's it. 2013 Guerrilla. Go get yourself one. $22,000. Should tell you that.